My guest today is Suzi Green, co-founder of the Positive Psychology Institute. Suzi is a leader and pioneer in the complementary fields of coaching psychology and positive psychology, and she lectures at the University of Sydney. Suzi, welcome to In Her Shoes.
Oh, good morning, Susie.
Thank you so much for joining us.
No problems.
Tell us a little bit about the work you do.
Okay, so in my business, we have three arms to the business. One is an individual arm where we provide, counselling, clinical services for treatment of disorders like depression and anxiety, because nobody is immune to those disorders. But we also take a very proactive approach, and so we provide individual personal coaching and executive coaching services. And we also have an arm which focuses on the educational sector, and we're doing work with a number of schools across Australia at the moment, and also an organisational sector and looking at applied positive psychology in the workplace.
There's a lot there.
What happening?
You're
yeah.
a very busy woman. I want to talk about a term that's been associated with you, and that is of signature strengths. And
Yes.
I want to talk specifically about women and identifying our strengths. How do we do that?
Definitely, and I guess, you know, in a country like Australia, and particularly with women, we find that they're quite modest, which is a wonderful quality, but it can also hold you back in a sense, particularly when you're applying, you know, for a position or putting your hand up to sort of stretch yourself in the workplace. So to be able to know what your strengths are and to have a language to actually speak about them is something that can be really effective for career development.
And we're talking beyond the, you know, filling out your application when you're applying for a job, tell me what your strengths are, or in an interview. We're talking about strengths that perhaps we don't even know we have.
Exactly, yes. And I guess within the scientific literature at the moment there's two camps. One is focused on what we call character strengths. So they're morally valued strengths like kindness, leadership is one, forgiveness, curiosity, creativity. And then there's another camp which I guess are strengths that are associated within the workplace. So for example, connector is my top strength. So that's that capacity to meet people and connect and put people together. And there's a larger number of strengths, and the instrument that we're using at the moment is Realise 2, which is I guess an online instrument, very reliable, very valid, and again, as I said, helps to identify strengths so that we have a language to talk about them.
How good are we naturally without a tool like that at knowing what our strengths are?
I guess it varies from individual to individual, but again, in my experience, and I have worked a lot with executive women, it is one of the areas that holds a woman back. So you'll often hear them say, well, my male counterpart had no problems in putting his hand up and being able to talk about his strengths, whereas I'm, you know, still pondering and wondering whether I'm actually quite ready and whether it's, you know, a good thing to actually start to talk about myself in such a proactive manner.
So having a diagnostic tool like the one you mentioned is one way to discover our strengths.
Yes.
Is there another way?
I think the assessment tool is probably the best way initially. It's a self-report, so it is, you know, asking yourself the questions that around the areas that you're good at. I guess a strength generally is defined, and particularly a signature strength, by something that you're not only competent at, but something that energises you, and that's what really differentiates strengths from competencies. So things that we're good at, things that energise us, and in particular, the things that we're doing on a daily basis.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. So the things that we enjoy quite often are things that we're good at.
Definitely, definitely, but not always, because you know, often again in my individual work, I'll have clients that tell me, you know, I'm very good at being an accountant, or I'm very good at being a lawyer, but it actually drains me, and I've done it for so long now, and I want to find something that I'm good at, but also I feel energised by.
So once we've identified our strengths, what do we do with that information, other than obviously using it next time we apply for a job?
Exactly, and I guess the greatest challenge in the strengths area at the moment is to not only know them, but to use them. So I guess some of the strategies that we use with some of our women are to have them visible, like to have a list visible, to use what we call visual triggers, so on your screen or in a little flashcard in your wallet. So some mechanism to remind you of what your strengths are and to help you to stay mindful of how am I actually going to use them. Additionally, I guess in executive coaching, when we're setting our goals for the sessions, we also look at how we can use those strengths in pursuit of those goals. And the research that's coming out at the moment is showing that there's greater goal attainment when we do actually apply our strengths.
I was recently in a coaching session myself and was celebrating an achievement, and what the coach had me do was say, well, what strengths of yours, what attributes of yours did you use to achieve that you could duplicate somewhere else? And
Yes.
it seems an obvious question, but it was really brought to life what underlay that success.
Exactly, and often, you know, when we look at what we do well, it's quite broadly, rather than actually, as you've identified, Suzi, is to sit and, I guess, pull it apart in detail and which specific strengths did I actually utilise that worked really well that I can consciously and proactively use in the continuation of my goal pursuit.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions just from a business owner perspective. We'd like to leave our viewer with some strategies from very different role models on what has worked for them as far as achieving success. So what would you like to leave us with?
Definitely. Well, I guess as a psychologist, I need to say that we need to be more proactive with our mental health and our mental fitness. So similarly to the way we are with our physical fitness. So most, you know, female business owners that I know have a very active physical exercise regime, which allows them to be energised and to have peak performance. But we also need to have the same with our mental health, our mental fitness. So ways to do that are firstly knowing what your strengths are and looking to use them as much as possible on a daily basis. Two would be to engage in some mindfulness training. There's many courses available across the country now, online as well, where you learn how to, I guess, train your brain and to be able to focus it where you want to focus it at the time you want to. And I guess thirdly, being really proactive again around your mental health and fitness. So seeking help rather than waiting until the stressors become overwhelming. Actively seek out whether it's a therapist or whether it's a coach. We outsource pretty much everything in our lives, and we just really need to lose the stigma around seeking help when it comes to mental health and fitness.
And I know that, you know, in other countries, having a therapist or seeking help is perhaps more normal than it is in Australia.
In New York, they brag about it. We're not there yet, but we're working on it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Suzi.